also want to thank the Freeman Consulting Group for putting this on. I think it's a wonderful expo we have right here. And also thank my team, Nancy, Charlotte, Nick, Mary Doris, and Tyler. And of course I want to thank our client. It's been great working with y'all. I think it's been a wonderful learning experience for us, and I hope it has been for y'all too. So I'll introduce y'all to our client, which is Offshore Inland. So Offshore Inland is a service and repair company for offshore oil field services equipment. And what that really means is they provide welding and electrical repair services for drilling rigs, platform supply vessels, and the whole variety of multi-million-dollar equipment with them. And they're headquartered in Mobile, Alabama, with operations in Port Fourchon, Galveston, Texas, and Pensacola, Florida. And those last two ports will really bring us to our project at hand, which was to determine, firstly, growth projections for each port, and secondly, to determine whether or not expansion in busy and lucrative port of Galveston made sense despite its expense. But in order to do so, we needed some background and context in this whole situation. I'll let Tyler.
Thank you, Frank. So to really evaluate our problem, we first wanted to have some context around the company and the industry as a whole. So we started off kind of looking at a top-down approach, looking at the Gulf of Mexico and the oil industry as a whole in that area. Then narrowed our focus more towards the oil services vessels and service industry in that area. Once we had a good idea of the different parts of that area, the drillers, the subsea sectors, which ones were growing, which ones were remaining flat, and which areas were potential growth areas for the company, we kind of then narrowed our focus more towards offshore inland itself, what exactly they were doing, how they fit in, the areas they saw growth, and really kind of where their focus was going. Once we had a better understanding of the company and kind of how they were playing in the industry, we then decided to look at ports themselves. Our initial assumption was simply because of the proximity of the Galveston port and the Gulf to the already established drilling rigs and infrastructure, that would probably be a better port as they're simply closer and more convenient to the majority of the businesses going on in that area. A little bit further, kind of went into the Port of Pensacola versus the Port of Galveston. We see first the Port of Pensacola, obviously it's a much smaller port, not that many oil services companies in the area, but Offshore Inland is the largest tenant in that area, so they can get a little bit more accommodation from the port itself, which is nice. The location itself is also beneficial as it's directly connected to the city, which is great for workers from these vessels that are being worked on while they're ashore. It provides them more of an opportunity, kind of more beneficial for them. Then we looked at Galveston. Galveston, as we know, that's proximity to Houston and the oil and gas market as a whole is outstanding. There's plenty of potential for growth. There's 300 plus oil companies working in that area in the industry. So there's obviously much greater potential for growth, but it's significantly more expensive. So, for example, one of Offshore Inland's largest competitors is paying almost $2 million a year in lease expense alone. So that's a substantial cost if you're going to expand in that area. Once we compared the two ports, though, we still felt that our initial assumption was more along the lines of being correct, that Galveston was probably the better area to be at from a quantitative perspective. It just had more to offer, regardless of the expense. But we still wanted to kind of look at it from a qualitative perspective. And for that, I'll let Frank get back and cover what we're doing there.
Thank you. And so, as Tyler mentioned, we kind of had the quantitative analysis all set, but qualitatively, we realized we're really using only one factor, and that was location, proximity. So, in order to make sure we were on the right path, we wanted to figure out, what other sort of metrics go into the process of choosing your service provider when you're a service company. So, we just decided to ask these companies, and we just contacted over 25 different companies from the subsea sector. And we talked to Caldive and Helix. We also talked to a variety of marine companies, Hornbeck, Technip, many more. I went to an offshore workboat conference here in New Orleans and actually talked to over a dozen companies there alone, ranging from port operators all the way down to competitors such as Bay Systems and Signal International. And what we found with that was, sure, location's important, but it's not as important as quality, safety and insurance and licensing, and the relationship itself. And so that how that fits into the overall recommendation of this is, we realize that, well, firstly, when you think about that, it makes sense. Because, when you're dealing with multi-million-dollar equipment, you want to have, be dealing with a guy that you trust, that you know is qualified, and that you know has all the proper licenses. So convenience, sure, that's nice, it counts, but when you have a $100 million vessel that you're dealing with, you want to be working with the best guys. So we took all of this in mind and kind of boiled it down to our recommendation for our client, which was, as you could guess, pursue the Galveston option, but with a major caveat being the relationship side of the business needs to count. By relationship, we need a corporate presence and a sales team presence as well, because we've really found they go hand in hand together, and we don't. The industry isn't kind of a field of dreams scenario. You can't just build the port space there, hoping the business will come. What we found is you really need both aspects, the relationship side and the physical side of this. So that was really what we found, and I think that's about it. If you want to open it up for questions.